Coming up, 3 things to watch during Vikings-Titans joint practice, plus the biggest risers and fallers on the depth charts, all coming up next on the Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party.
Back in the lab, another edition, Football Party, Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. This is your daily breakdown of everything Minnesota Vikings. See that? That's Sam Ekstrom. He's on Twitter, at Sam Ekstrom. He's the co-host of the Ron Johnson Show every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Sam, when it comes to Vikings training camp, if this was Cannonberry Park, we'd be entering the final stretch around the bend. Here they come, just 4 practices left. Give us a little quick horse racing announcer voice. You got one in there? Around the bend they come. It's Rager and Powell, neck and neck. Who's it going to be? Hold your tickets. You're better at it than I am. I know you got
into the final furlong. Kene Nwangwu had the lead. Oh, he comes up lame. Oh, man. I had a good rhythm there, and I lost it. Here comes Ty Chandler on the outside. Dwayne McBride fading. Abram Smith out of nowhere. But it's going to be Ty Chandler hitting the line in front.
Hold your tickets. Hold your tickets. We got a photo finish. Hey, quick
PA's
sidebar.
never had a coughing fit like that.
I'll tell you what, quick sidebar. First of all, props to you. That was phenomenal. But, man, if you're in the general Twin Cities area, and if you haven't made it out to Cannonberry yet, just to listen to PA call those horse races, man, worth the price of admission alone. Do yourself a favor. Go check that out before the summer ends. Back to it here, Sam. Let's reel it back in. 14 practices on paper heading in. 2 have been rained out. We got 4 left. 2 with the Titans, 2 with the Cardinals. And that's all she wrote for training camp 2023. I guess my quick question just to open here. What's been the biggest surprise or biggest difference, right, from practice 1 to where we're at now? Because you've been out there every day, so no one knows this stuff better than you.
Yeah, I think the rotations have actually gotten almost more diverse as camp's gone on. It seemed like that first week things were a little bit more locked in even than they are now. And injuries have played, I think, a bigger role in this camp than maybe the past couple of camps. There've been a lot of them, Luke. And a lot of bubble guys, too, have been banged up. And it's caused some upheaval in this depth chart. It's actually, I think, harder to track who's really in control, because you don't know, okay, have they just been elevated because of injury, or have they been elevated because of their performance? And that's what we don't know. So I'll be honest with you, I might even be more confused now than I was when camp started about who's going to make this team. And of course, the games themselves play a big role in that evaluation. So now we've got 1 game under our belt. We've made some impressions, 2 more games to go, 2 joint practices to go. So really, most of the evaluation stuff is still out in front of us. We've got 4 joint practices, 2 games. Those are some big moments for all the guys on this roster. And of course, injuries still a factor with several of these guys, opening doors for some younger players or some bubble guys. So while I've seen a lot of football thus far, I still think that the most important stuff is still ahead of us.
That's a really good point there, Sam. We don't know. It's tough to decipher. Okay, is this just a sub package or a new wrinkle? That's why Josh Metellus and Ivan Pace are out here. Or are these guys actually trying to supplant themselves and leapfrog another guy into this actual rotation and depth chart? And I would imagine, too, you're not going to see any starters, or at least the heavy majority, right, will be sitting those preseason games, right? These last 2 versus the Titans and Cardinals. So these joint practices really are the first team guys' last opportunity to go out there and get some real live reps versus another team before the regular season, before week 1 at the bank versus the Bucs. So when you think about it like that, this is going to be a huge measuring tool to really find out where this team is in certain categories and phases of the game. Titans joint practices start tomorrow. That would be August 16th and 17th. Then you got preseason game number 2. That's on Saturday, 7 p.m. kickoff. Then you get those few days of rest following that. And then next week, it's same thing. It's copy paste. Wednesday, Thursday, Arizona Cardinals are in town. Wrap up training camp, those final 2 practices. Game 3 on Saturday at the bank. That's a noon kickoff this time to wrap things up before Kwesi and KOC. They got to make their final cut downs and trim this whole thing down to just 53 guys. All right, coming up, going to give you 3 big things to watch for at joint practices, plus which guys are rising, which guys are falling up and down the depth chart. But first, quick reminder, don't forget, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, Sam, let's each knock out 3 things we're just most intrigued or excited to watch when the Tennessee Titans roll into town tomorrow. But first, let me take a step back. Let me just ask you this. What do you remember most about the Niners coming into town for these joint practices from last year? Like, what sticked out to you as far as just specific memory, a splash play, or just maybe the overall vibe and mood or the big takeaways from the week? And I ask because maybe it will help glean some info for fans as far as what to expect this time around.
Yeah, so I remember Trey Lance on the first half of the first day, like, being unbelievable. The effortlessness that he threw the ball with was extraordinary. He is a cannon. I don't think he's really been able to unleash it on the league at all, but he was really impressive. I was texting my California buddies saying, look out, I think you've got a player here. And then I thought he came back to earth a little bit as the 2 days went on, and obviously never really got his feet under him in the regular season. But for a minute there, I was really pumped about Trey Lance. I remember Kirk Cousins got really fired up and might have sworn at the 49ers, which is very out of character for Kirk. Adam Thielen got really fired up, got in a little tussle.
I remember that.
Smack
I remember that. Yeah.
Thielen was feeling it.
I remember from those 2 days, sorry to interrupt you. I just remember KOC made a big thing about, hey, I want to make it clear, nobody goes overboard here. If you go overboard or throw a punch, you're out, you're done, you're gone for the day. And I remember even after that, even after he established these rules and guidelines, there was still some big scuffles like there always is. I mean, you got the dog days of summer, finally some new competition that isn't your own teammates for once. Guys are getting chippy. You got Brock Lesnar's suplexing third string interior lineman, Sam. I mean, you never know, but multiple scuffles. And I remember a lot of them revolved around Chris Boyd on special teams. And then I just remember Thielen and Bradbury. They were getting really ticked off because the Niners kept, whether it was, on accident or purpose, I don't know, but kept bringing ball carriers all the way to the ground, which is a big no, obviously. Can't do that. So, that does jog my memory. I remember there were a lot of hits that brought a guy to the ground, which is obviously a big no-no. That's good memory on your part. And special teams you mentioned, I remember watching this up close, and this is where it got really heated. Gunning drills. Think about putting your gunner against the jammer and doing live punt gunning drills against a guy from the opponent that you don't like on a hot day. That got heated because there's so much jostling and pushing and shoving and holding, and you're going full speed. Yeah, that was actually one of the more interesting sessions I remember from last year. It was a good 2 days. I think the Niners were missing a couple stars, if I'm not mistaken. Garoppolo was out. Bosa, I think, was out. Maybe Kittle. So it wasn't as star-studded as it could have been, but that was still a good test and a quality team. And I'm sure somewhere on the far field, Brock Purdy was flying under the radar. That's the guy we should have been watching, Luke. Yeah, no kidding. I do remember Bosa clips on Twitter. So he maybe missed one day, but definitely practiced another, because I remember everybody said on Twitter, Bosa had 3 or 4 or 5 sacks today. But then you'd see the clips on Twitter and it'd be like, okay, in a real game, they're probably not going to try to block him one-on-one without any help, with no chip or no extra tight end. So how realistic is this? And then the other big thing, I think it was Peter King was there. Somebody from a big media or outlet was there, but he was the guy who kind of started this whole Christian Darrisaw, right? The second-year kid from Virginia Tech, first-round tackle. He was hurt last year. He's looking like Trent Williams 2.0. Again, I think it was Peter King. Thinking about your time watching the Niners, look in your crystal ball now and tell me what the big storyline will be when these 2 days are over with the Titans, for the Vikings specifically.
Well, you think Mike Vrabel and you think running the ball in defense, you think about physicality. So I guess I would expect more physicality, and particularly in the trenches, there's going to be some good tests. And we alluded to this on the football party yesterday with Luke Braun and Arif Hassan. Not only is Jeffrey Simmons on that interior, but don't sleep on Tier Tart. Tier Tart, big nose tackle, number 93. He's entering a contract year. He's a big ugly that a lot of people don't know about, but he's a quality player for Tennessee. And then Danico Autry on the other side in their 3-4. The interior line's going to be tested. Ed Ingram, Garrett Bradbury, Ezra Cleveland. I mean, aren't they really one of the biggest question marks about this Vikings offense? You'd love the offense with the exception of the protection. And when they don't change anything from last year's offensive line that allowed the most quarterback hits in the league, they are sending the message that we are so confident you're going to improve that we're not going to touch this group. We think that another year together is enough. Okay, prove it. Prove it. Ed Ingram, I'm not sure he showed that in the first preseason game. He was playing next to backups. Okay, we'll give him a pass. Now you're going to play next to Brian O'Neill, who's going through 11 on 11s now. You're playing next to Garrett Bradbury. Okay, so no excuses now. Interior offensive line's got to get the job done against a really tough Titans group that I'm not sure about their edge rushing as much. I'm not sure Harold Landry and Arden Key are a tremendous duo, but they're solid, right? So that group's going to have to hold up. That's probably where my eyes go first. It's not necessarily a star-studded Titans roster, but you got some big names on the offensive side of the ball, too, with DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry.
I want to touch on that Titans defensive tackle rotation and the test that's going to be put on this interior. Let me take a step back, and I think, all right, everyone's going to gush about JJ. And I'm talking about the national media now, like the Peter Kings of the world. We, the local media, we gush about JJ every day, so that's not a new thing. I think the next hot topic or big storyline, national-wise, right, like the Florios and whatnot, I think it's either going to be A, Jordan Addison looks legit. He's the real deal. This passing game's going to cook with all these weapons. Or B, I think everybody's going to go nuts about Brian Flores. This dude's a mad scientist. This defense looks drastically improved. Those would be my two guesses for the A topic, right? The big storyline, because you're not tackling anyone. So I don't think it's going to be odds on anyways, Madison or maybe Chandler. JJ is definitely, I mean, he's not played out, but he's just the easy default answer. So that's kind of my one prediction. You already gave one as well. Give me another prediction or just something you're looking forward to or maybe seeing a matchup you can't wait to watch. Anything you've got on your mind about Vikings-Titans joint practices this week.
Yeah, let's see how the secondary does, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the offensive line is the big offensive question, then the secondary is the clear defensive question. We didn't see Byron Murphy in the first preseason game, so now that he's going to be lined up against D-Hop, his former teammate from Arizona, how's that going to go? And then opposite of him, okay, maybe Murphy is shutting down Hopkins. Well, how is Caleb Evans going to do against Treylon Burks? It's not a fantastic Titans receiving core, Luke. I mean, beyond DeAndre Hopkins, I'm not sure that you are like enamored by their 2 and certainly their 3 and 4. In fact, beyond Treylon Burks, there's not a lot of star power there. So this is a group that I think it's probably a good doppelganger. If you can hold up against the Titans, okay, good. You've passed your first test. Now let's see how you do against the next group. And Andrew Booth Jr. needs these reps, right? He barely got any reps last year because he was hurt. Caleb Evans needs these reps. So many of these guys in the secondary have had so few reps at the NFL level. And then, of course, the safeties, too. You know, Lewis Seen, he's got to get plenty of practice as well after getting hurt in week 4 last year. So I'm obviously looking at the secondary, seeing how they hold up against one star in Hopkins and then another group that's plucky, maybe not as star-driven as you might see across the league.
How many reps do you think Byron Murphy and DeAndre Hopkins have against one another back from their Arizona days? I mean, what do we at 500 reps? I mean, those two, they have to know each other inside and out, their tendencies, the nuances of their game, their habits, their good habits, their bad habits, all that stuff. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Your first original one I want to touch back on, Titans defensive tackles versus interior. I mentioned it kind of yesterday too on the football party. Okay, this is the way my mind works. Okay, if this is only practice, I want these guys to face the best competition possible, just as a litmus test, just to see where we stand against the best of the best. And, you know, in the process of iron sharpens iron, we get better, then that's great too. But there was a guy coming out 2019 draft class. I studied game after game of him. He was projected to be a top 5 pick before an ACL tear. That dropped his stock a little bit heading into draft weekend. And everybody knew just off the tape and the talent, this guy was an absolute game wrecker. I mean, close to a blue chip kind of prospect. Sure enough, he's still on the board. When the Vikings are on the clock at pick 18, they select Garrett Bradbury, which was fine, by the way. I was jacked up about Bradbury. I thought he was going to be awesome for 10, 12 years. He'd be that anchor right in the middle of the line they needed. If they were going to roll with Kirk Cousins, that was the big thing. Hey, you got this pure pocket guy. He thrives on clean protection. Let's get him an anchor right in the middle with Bradbury. But sure enough, one pick later, the Titans hand in the card, Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle, Mississippi State. Rest is history, man. 4 years in the league, 2 Pro Bowls back-to-back the last 2 years, by the way, and he's racked up 21 sacks, 28 tackles for loss, and 46 quarterback hits. And this dude is an absolute monster in the middle of the defense. So, yeah, I can't wait to see Simmons line up right over Garrett Bradbury and watch the 18th overall pick versus the 19th overall pick and just watch them go at it mano-a-mano. And the hope is, obviously too, Sam, Bradbury can learn a thing or two now before the regular season when these reps actually count. Can't wait for that. Do you remember that draft, by the way? We were both covering it, live at TCO, and after every pick, we'd go sneak off to like the janitor's closet or something to live stream our analysis for zone coverage. Do you remember that? That was a great draft. I was geeked about that draft. A lot of people were hyped because it was Irv Smith in the second round, who, by the way, they did it again. The very next pick 51. Do you remember who it is? You know what I'm going to say?
A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown, man. You could have walked out of there with Jeffrey Simmons and A.J. Brown. I'm not talking about like trading up and mortgaging the future. No, just sitting where you're at. Just staying put. Spielman, you don't need a wheel and deal. A.J. Brown and Jeffrey Simmons, man. That's why these drafts are so huge, man. Make or break your franchise. The future for the next 5-6 years. And you look at just what the Seahawks have done too. That's the easy example. The Seahawks post Russell Wilson. It's absolute insanity. They've crushed back-to-back drafts. By the way, everybody's got the Niners to win the West. Give me the Hawks. Give me the Hawks and the value all day. I think the Hawks are going to run the NFC West for the next 2-3 years.
Wow.
Go ahead.
No, just wow. I mean, that's a good take. It's a hot take.
I like the value. I really do. I mean, not to go too deep in the weeds, this is a Viking show, but Niners, they're obviously going to still win double digits. But that quarterback situation, man, it just doesn't make you feel good if you're putting your hard-earned money on a bet. You want to feel good about it. That Niners quarterback situation just doesn't make me feel good. All right, last one here. An observation or question. Third one, last one. Matchup you're looking forward to. Anything the most with this Titans-Vikings joint practices. Lay it on me. What do you got?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's hard to identify like what the matchup is with the Titans running game versus the Vikings front, because you're not tackling Derrick Henry. And that's what I want to see. I want to see them try to tackle and stop a good running attack in Derrick Henry, because what's one of the big weaknesses of this defense going back the last 3 years? They tried Dalvin Tomlinson. They tried Michael Pierce. Even that wasn't enough to have a good rush defense. So can these corners, these nickels, these edges, can they help tackle with the perimeter run force and get these guys to the ground? Derrick Henry's one of the last workhorses in this league. I'm not sure how to really judge, though, how the Vikings perform against him this week, other than are they close to him when he reaches the line of scrimmage, or is he just in wide open spaces? So it's a tough measuring stick to know really how they're doing. I know the coaches have their ways, but the true test is going to be in the regular season with the live bullets. Can they bring these big backs to the ground?
Yeah, I love that one, man. And we're all thinking it. We mentioned it yesterday. Ivan Pace meeting Derrick Henry in the hole. What is that, like a 78-pound difference? My third one, love that one, by the way. You know I'm a draft nerd. You remember all the hype, all the buzz around all these quarterbacks linked and connected to the Vikings during draft month. Which one's KOC going to take? Will Levis, his name got brought up a ton, right? A lot of people connected those dots to the Vikings, mainly because everybody knew, all right, Bryce Young's going to be gone. CJ Stroud's going to be long gone. So it quickly became a conversation of, all right, Will Levis or our guy, Hendon Hooker, for weeks and weeks leading up to the draft. So I just want to see Will Levis up close and personal and see him just spin it with my own two eyes one time just to see what Kwesi potentially missed out on. He was only 9 of 14 versus the Bears. He had one interception, but I'll be honest, I watched a few plays. That ball was humming out of his hand, man. I know he's a big project, but I kind of liked what I saw. And then, of course, the guy on the other side, you want to see Jaron Hall. You want to see both rookie quarterbacks. What's he look like a week after his first start? Is he able to continue to take steps forward, continue the progression, the development? Because at this point, how young, how far away he is from actually seeing any starting time or the field, you just want to see every day keep moving forward, just even if they're baby steps. And I thought he looked really poised versus the Seahawks for his first professional start at quarterback. But can he show that same consistency now? It's a new opponent. It's a new defense. It's a new scheme. Those are the things you want to see as a coach, I think. And I think watching Levis and Hall on the same field, sling it around, is just going to be a fun eye test for sure. Same with the rookie running backs, too. A lot of people, myself included, had Dwayne McBride and Tajay Spears graded very close to one another. So Spears ends up going in the 3rd round. McBride goes in the 7th. Two different style runners. But again, it's the eye test. To be able to watch these guys run the ball in person is always a little bit more educational than just watching the tape. Final thoughts, Titans-Vikings scrimmage coming up these next 2 days. Anything?
There's going to be some intriguing quarterbacks that don't get a lot of run because you've got, I assume that Willis is the 2 with the Titans based on the way the preseason game went for them. So that means Levis is the 3 and Jaron Hall is the clear 3. So, I mean, it's worth keeping your eyes on the field at all times. A lot of times you might tune out when the 3rd string is out there. Not this week. You want to watch Levis. You want to watch Hall. And then both of them will get the chance to carry over what they see in practice into the game. Whereas Kirk Cousins, he's probably going to do his work in practice and then shelve it on Saturday. But then Hall and Levis, they might be going against each other in the second half on Saturday. So that again, reason to watch until the end of these preseason games that are otherwise pretty boring.
Yeah, good point. Wednesday, Thursday, Titans-Vikes joint practice. This guy, Sam Ekstrom, he's going to be out there all week long. You can find all his coverage right here up on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. So another great reminder here, too. Subscribe to the YouTube page if you haven't already. All right, coming up next, who's rising? Who's falling on the next Vikings depth chart? But first, quick reminder, don't forget we're presented by FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Locked On, America's #1 sportsbook, and official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Football season just weeks away. FanDuel's giving you the chance to win all season long. Check this out right now. When you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every single victory. How great is that? And you can use these bonus bets on money lines, parlays, player props, over-unders, you name it, they got it. Just for example, you want to bet on the Vikes 25-1 to win it all. Every time they win in the regular season, you're getting bonus bets back into your account the very next day. And just looking at the schedule, Sam, Vikes at home, week 1 versus the Bucs. I like my chances to see those bonus bets back into my account Monday morning. Just download the easy-to-use FanDuel app. Get your winnings instantly. Go check it out, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and start earning bonus bets back with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, Sam. Plenty of buzz and excitement last week at this time when KOC unveiled his first depth chart of the 2023 season, even though he warned us, hey, pump the brakes, take all this with a grain of salt. But just knowing what we know, seeing what we've seen off that trip to Seattle, I want one offensive and one defensive winner along with one offense and defensive loser. Let's start on offense. Which guy's stock is just moving up the depth chart next time around? Who you got?
It's got to be the man of the hour. It's got to be Ty Chandler, right? Ty Chandler buried at number 3 behind Kene Nwangwu. And I think Nwangwu, he's in a tough spot because he's injured. He doesn't have a great track record to say that he definitely can do this stuff. I think he needs these reps just as much as Chandler. And Chandler's out here playing great, and Nwangwu is on the shelf. And that's a tough situation for him to be in. So I think Chandler could definitely be vying for that number 2 distinction. KOC's asked him to be a little more consistent. And I just think that Chandler, as a pure runner and a pass catcher and pass protector, has a little more to offer than Nwangwu, who, again, probably a little more injury prone, might get beaten down a little bit if he's in a bigger role, and hasn't shown the passing game prowess that we thought he might. Yes, in the open field, he's dangerous, but he's got to catch the ball. And to be in those positions, you have to prove you can pass protect. Well, Ty Chandler is one of their best pass protectors in that game on Thursday. So I'm